Hey, what's up, players? Chicago and I back again, and today we're going to do something we hadn't done in a while, which is run another another server drop video. And this is going to blend in also with our Intel bytes because there's kind of two parts of this particular one. And we're going to talk about how to do some packet analysis by looking at some packets like from Wireshark, a PCAP file, and try to determine what an actual attack is going on. And then from there, we're going to actually break back into the system because what we're actually investigating is that somebody had put a backdoor on this particular machine over here called Overpass 2. So it is going to blend both pop series and also the Intel byte series because it covers both basically. All right, I haven't done one of these in a while, so yeah, it'd be fun to get back here and pop another server here. So I use TryHackMe because I just enjoy it. I like it. It's very easy to use. Everything is done in a format where it kind of teaches people. The thing I see a lot though with the reason why I started the pop series is because there's a lot of different write-ups that I see out there for capture the flags, which is what this is considered. And I have no issue with any of those write-ups because, you know, they're accurate. But some of the videos and such of people kind of doing a walkthrough of some of these things, sometimes, not all the times, but sometimes they'll just kind of, you know, blaze on through with just ripping out all these different commands, but not really stopping to smell the roses for a bit and say, here's why I'm running this command, or here's the methodology behind in my brain here of why I'm doing this. You know, they don't really spend a whole ton of time doing an explanation of these sort of things. So that's my goal with the pop series, is to use CTS to teach some of these hacking concepts in a way that hopefully you can understand, because I try to explain, you know, the methodology behind it so that we don't turn into a bunch of skitties, script kiddies as they're typically called. We just want to be able to know exactly what are we doing here, why are we typing this command, why are we using these particular switches, things like that, and the methodology behind what we're doing. So that's the general purpose of this series. So today's, we're going to go over this thing called Overpass 2. It's pretty cool, and they have a backdoor that was installed on a particular machine, and as a after-action review, an investigation, we're trying to figure out, based off of a PCAP file that we've captured, which is a output file from Wireshark. Wireshark is what they call a network sniffer, and it captures the network traffic of what has happened. So the idea is that we download that PCAP file, we open it up, and we start investigating, and we answer some questions that they list out here to kind of explain what actually happened. And then from there, we'll actually go into the machine and try to utilize what the bad guy actually put into play ourselves, okay? So let's get crackalating, baby. So Overpass, let's see here. Overpass has been hacked. The SOC noticed suspicious activity and was capturing packets. And there's the PCAP file. So if you're following along on TryHackMe, you would download that particular PCAP file. And I already did, and I put it here. Let me go ahead and let me clear actually first. There we go. And let me back up here. There we go. So I had already downloaded it, and it is right here. Okay. And if we open it up in Wireshark, you would bring up Wireshark and you would go to File, Open, and then you would navigate to the PCAP file, and it opens up here. All right, very cool. This isn't gonna be a tutorial on how to use Wireshark, you know, beginning to end, but I'll show a couple things to kind of help us along. But let's take a look and see what the first challenge is here. It says, what was the URL of the page they used to upload a reverse shell? Okay, a reverse shell, essentially, if you're not familiar with it, is kind of like if I were to put something on your machine that when run, if you ran it from your machine, it would try to connect to me, the attacker, and allow me in. And the reason why we want to do something like a reverse shell is that if the actual shell is on a machine of a user that's inside of the network and behind the firewall, and the firewall is stateful in nature, the firewall being stateful will not allow unsolicited traffic. So me just poking and prodding, saying, hey player, open up and let me in, ain't gonna happen. Firewall's gonna say, you know, deny all by default, and all that kind of good stuff. So in this case, the idea is that whatever is solicited traffic would be coming from the inside, the trusted network, going to the outside. So if somebody from the inside sent a request out to a web page on the outside from the inside, the firewall would see the packet coming back from that server and say, okay, so-and-so requested this, so it is solicited traffic, and it would allow it through. Probably do some inspection anyways, either way, but the concept relies on being stateful in nature there. So the idea that attackers like to do is they like to try to get you, the user, to run, without your knowledge essentially here, that you're running this particular reverse shell, which connects out to and fights the attacker in essentially. And typically you'll see things like a tool called Netcat is a very common one, but there's a variety of different reverse shells. Matter of fact, there's a website called Pentest Monkey that has a cheat sheet of all these different ones. Like if the victim had Python on the machine, you could run this particular one, and then you would just essentially modify this IP address to be your attacking machine, and this port here as well, right? So that's essentially what they're talking about in that. So it says, what's the URL of the page they use to upload a reverse shell? The key word here is upload. Now, when you do an upload, when you do a request to a web page or anything, you have a couple different options that are the most used. One is called get, and one is called post. Get means get me the page, let me see the garbage from that page here and display it to me. Post means I'm filling out a form, what have you, click and submit, and I'm posting this information to the actual web server. So that would actually include a body of that particular packet. So because this is an upload where we're actually physically doing something and posting, we are looking for post commands in our PCAP file. And over here in Wireshark, you can see this, by the way, this is the one that I downloaded. So this is traffic that has already happened. So this is nothing that I've run on my machine. This is traffic that we are analyzing. So we see here get development. We have an HTTP one there, get development. So that's not what we're looking for because that's not the actual upload function. So let's go down a little bit further here. There we go. Post right there. So HTTP post /development/upload.php. There's our huckleberry. So if we go back here and look, that's what I put down. The URL for the page is /development. It says, what payload did the attacker use to gain access? So when we look at this post, what you can do in Wireshark is you can follow what's called a TCP or an HTTP stream, either one, whatever one you want to use. I'm going to use TCP because there's two different ways. If you're not familiar with TCP versus something called UDP, they're what they're called transport protocols. Think of TCP as being, let's say, for instance, in the real world, we had packages that needed to be delivered to a warehouse that I work at. And we have 10 packages coming from a location to my warehouse. When the truck gets there, I'm checking in the truck and I'm looking and I'm saying, okay, there's 1 of 10, there's 2 of 10, there's 3 of 10. Hey, I'm missing 4 of 10. I'm missing the 4th package. Where's that at? And the truck driver will have to go back and pick it up and get it and come back because I don't have my complete order. I don't have all 10. That's TCP. Okay, that's a traffic pattern that says, I am going to set up a connection with you and I will ensure that all packets get to where they need to be. It may take a little slower, but that's because I'm trying to get completeness in this case here. Whereas the other transport protocol, UDP, it just fast and the furious, running down the street, packages are falling out the back of the truck. We don't care. All we care about is how fast did the truck get here. That's UDP, typically used for things like streaming and VoIP and those sort of things. So in this case here, to follow the TCP stream, this is what we want because it would use something called a three-way handshake, SYN, ACK, and ACK, and we'll talk about that in a second. So if I right-click on the actual packet, if I go down here to where it says follow, I can say follow TCP stream, and it will give me an outline of what has happened on that post-upload command. So whatever happened in that three-way handshake connection to do with the upload, I can see here by doing this. So if we look at it, we can see there's the post, and it looks like the file name is called payload.php. That's the file to upload. And then we see this odd content here, right there. So this is telling me that it wants to execute a particular command from PHP. And then we see this weird string of characters. Now, as we go down through this string of characters, we're seeing it's concatenating commands together. And it looks like the NC right here is typical of a tool called Netcat. Netcat is what they consider to be the Swiss Army knife of hackers. That's the term they give it. But you can do a lot of things with Netcat. You can set up, typically we'll use it in this case for something like creating a reverse shell to connect back to. Okay. In this particular case, it appears this is the IP address and the port number for that Netcat listener. So if we come back here to our Pentest Monkey and we look up Netcat for reverse shell, there it is. Look at that. Looks very similar, doesn't it? RM, TMP, F, there's their MK FIFO. Let's come back here again. Right there, RM, TMP, F, MK FIFO. So we can see that what the attacker is doing in this case here is that this thing they're uploading is actually a Netcat reverse shell onto the machine. And that's the first part of our investigation to say, okay, they're doing some bad stuff here. And if we come back and look, that's what I put here, what payload. Now this is kind of odd. I had to mess with this for a while and try to get it to accept it. I don't know why it needed this stuff here, but either way. That right there signifies the bracket. It's called encoding. I don't know why it needed it, but for some reason I tried a variety of ways to get it to accept it, and that's the only one it did. It says, what password did the attacker use to privesc? Privesc means privilege escalation. In other words, I broke in as a person that is a standard user, and I want to elevate my privileges to admin, root, what have you. So let's get on back here to our stream, and let's see if there's anything in this particular one. I don't see anything else in here, so let's close this out. So in that particular case, and if you did this, you probably had this filter already populate, which means you can't see the rest of the packets. So to continue, you have to kind of clear that filter out. There you go. All right, so I can guess that very shortly after this, that there is going to be a three-way handshake that happens to do what this bad guy basically did. So as you go down, we're looking for something like a SYNAC, and not just a SYNAC here. We want it kind of related to this particular one or after this particular one. So when they say SYNAC, and ACK, they're talking about something called a three-way handshake. So picture yourself, you have two computers, computer A, computer B. Excuse me. When computer A wants to connect to computer B, it will send a packet and it will flag it with the word SYN. So if you click on a SYN packet and then you expand open the Transmission Control Protocol, TCP, and you go down here to flags and expand that, you will see they put a 1. 1 means turn it on, 0 means turn it off. In this case, they're saying I'm setting the SYN flag. If there's a SYNAC packet, it's setting a 1 in the SYN and setting a 1 in the acknowledgement. So that's kind of how you would view that particular thing. So when they do, computer A sends a SYN packet to computer B. If computer B is listening and alive and wants to communicate, it will send back an acknowledgement called a SYNAC packet. Then to complete the handshake, I would then, computer A, would send an ACK, my acknowledgement that we have this, sounds like a priest or something, you know, I acknowledge my sin. In this case here, we're sending it back, acknowledging it, and then the connection is made, and then that is the session that we have now, and then all the packets flowing back and forth are within that particular session. That is what they call a TCP three-way handshake. So we are looking for something like that after this post. We see a bunch of ACKs. Fin means it closed gracefully. RST would mean it's ungraceful. Let's see, get development. Okay, so here's a get packet right there. So I'm guessing it's starting with this particular one here, because if you look over here at the IP address, that would be the other one. Okay, so I'm guessing this is where it all kind of starts. So let's go ahead and right click on this SYN packet, and we'll come down to follow TCP stream. Aha, very cool. All right. So here we can see the first thing that they get is a can't access TTY. TTY is a little bit more old school terminology here for having to do with the terminals back in the day before we had all the sweet computing that we do now. To simulate that, there is a common Python command that we can run to kind of simulate a TTY, which would give us what they consider to be called a stable shell. because an unstable shell would mean that if I typed in a certain command, it may crash the whole thing and I have to restart. So the idea is to actually make a more solid shell or a more solid TTY. And a very common command to do that is Python 3, tac-c, import, pttty, spawn, blah, 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 and so on and so forth. Matter of fact, in some of my older Dradis ones here, we haven't been in Dradis in a while, I had actually put that in my CTF cheat sheet here of some commands that you can actually run for that. And I think one of them was this one right here, Python TT shell. Okay, and I'm about to sneeze, so let me pause for a second. All right, I'm sure you didn't want to hear that. So yeah, so if we actually look here, I already had this one as one of my normal commands I would do if I came across a machine that I've got into with a reverse shell and I needed a more stable one. This is one I would run. So this is a very common one, a very typical one that we've seen before. So we can see that's exactly what this guy is trying to do. And then they're running an ls, lah, trying to find some hidden files. So when you actually do a dot, that means a hidden file in this case here. And we see this dot overpass, and we see the payload PHP. Then they use the cat command, which would basically in command prompt or a bash shell, I'm sorry, it would actually display the contents of a text file in the shell itself. And then let's see here, su James. So su means switch user. So what they're doing in this case here is they're switching user to James, and then they would put in their password. And fortunately for us, there we see it right there in clear text. I don't even know what that means. Whenever not instant, whatever that is all about. But that answers our question that they were asking here. What password did the attacker use to privesc? And in this case here, how did the attacker establish persistence? Let's go on back here again to the stream. So here we can see that they're running the sudo tac-l command. Now sudo tac-l, when I say tac, by the way, I mean dash. Sudo tac-l is basically, if I were to have broken into a machine and I wanted to find out if the user that I broke in as actually has any type of root privileges, like run as admin for the Windows people in the stream. If I wanted to find that out, I would run sudo tac-l to find out what privileges they have. For example, I'm logged in right now as root on my attack machine. So if I did sudo tac-l, you will see this right here. I have access to run root as everything. So if I were not root and I was, Leroy Jenkins, standard user guy, but I gave Leroy Jenkins the ability to run any command as root, sudo tac-l would show this under Leroy, and then I would say sudo, then the command, enter, and then put my Leroy Jenkins password in, and I would run it as root. Okay, that's the idea behind that. So that's what it looks like what they're doing here is they're trying to find out what privileges they have, and it looks like they do actually have all root privileges. So because of that, it looks like he ran etc shadow. So in Linux, if you're not familiar with it, let me go back here. There's a location file called etc passwd. That's under the location etc. If I run cat, which means display the text file here in the shell, if I say cat/etc/passwd, this will show the users that are on a particular machine. So whenever I would break into a machine, that's one of the first things I would run to see if for some reason, which is not common, if they were to have actually put the hash of their password here. If I see an X, I know that no, it's not here. It's actually in another file called shadow. So in this case here, I see there's a bunch of users like Ray and Leroy, right? And the X would say, okay, these actual hashes are not actually here. They're in another file called shadow, cat etc shadow. And when I run cat etc shadow, it looks like this. And essentially what you'll see here as you scroll down is you'll see these. You'll see instead of an X on the second part, you'll actually see that. Okay, that is the hash, salted hash in this case here, of user James. And it seems like we have James, we have somebody called Paradox, Seismix, B, and Maryland, I think it is. So yeah, interesting stuff there. So we do see that they do have root privileges, and we see that there are other users on this machine. But the question was asking what's being used to establish persistence. And by persistence, we're saying I broke it into the machine and I've done what I wanted to do, the dastardly deed, and I want to be able to get back into this machine at any time without going through all this nonsense of setting up and uploading reverse shells. What can I do to establish persistence so that I can come back at any time I want? Well, one way to do it is to set up a backdoor that's always running when the machine boots at a particular port number. If I know that port number, I will then connect via SSH. Let's just say it's an SSH one, and I can just get in that way, and I don't have to do this whole process again. So it looks like that's, by looking at the name of this executable here, it looks like that's kind of what he's trying to do. And that's at this website, GitHub, blah, 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 SSH Backdoor. So let's go check that out and see exactly what that is. By the way, that would be the answer to this question. That's what he was using to establish persistence. So we go to the GitHub here, and we see it's an SSH backdoor. Pretty common sense. So the idea, again, is to put this backdoor on the machine, and that at any time I want to get back into the machine, unless they found it and got rid of it, I would then SSH into the machine's IP address with whatever port is listening, and the backdoor would allow me in as James or whoever. All right, so let's take a look here then, and let's see what else they want to know about. Using the fast track word list, how many of the system passwords were crackable? Okay, so we're going to come back to this here in a moment because we'll have some questions later about this. But right now they're asking us to crack the system passwords that are in there using the fast track word list. Okay, so to do something like that, what you would do is you would actually go ahead and put all of the ones that you saw in this Wireshark, these ones right here. Well, actually, we don't need James, but we would grab these ones here, or you could use James too as well. But you would grab all that content and you would put it into a text file. Okay, now I've actually done that ahead of time just to save a little time. So if I cat users.txt, you can see that I've actually done that. I put James, I put Paradox, all of them into one file. And we're going to use John the Ripper, but they're saying we have to use the fast track word list. Now, if you don't have the word list and you're not using something like Kali Linux that I'm using, you would go online and download it. But in this case, I'm using Kali Linux, and to find it, I'm going to go ahead and say locate fast track. And we can see it is right there. Okay? Now, I've already done this ahead of time, so it may show up in something they call john.pot file. The pot file is essentially where all the cracked passwords that I've done go, and I didn't actually delete it before this, so it may actually be in there. But let me show you how you would do this. So you would say John, and then you would say the name of the file that has all the the hashes in it. So in this case, it's users.txt, and then you would say tac word list equals, and then you would put in the word list that you want, in this case being fast track. So when you run that, it'll run. And I've already done it. So it's already in what they call the pot file. So let me go ahead and do that. So I'll say John, tac show, and then you just do the file that you had just did the crack on, which in this case was users.txt. And it should show the results of all the cracked ones. So in this case here, we didn't crack James's, but we did crack these other 4. So the answer to that question is there were 4 hashes that were cracked right there. Okay, so that answers that. Very cool. All right, let's move on. Research, analyze the code. Let's see what else is next. All right, now that we found the code for the backdoor, it's time to analyze it. What's the default hash for the backdoor? So let's go back to the website here, and here's the backdoor that we have, and this would be the main file that everything is kind of bumped off of here. So let's go ahead and click on that and take a peek here. Now, you don't have to necessarily be a coder to understand all this stuff. If you look down through it and apply a little bit of logic and a little bit of keywords, you can kind of determine what's going on. Because me, I'm not a Go developer. I've never coded in it, but I'm familiar with a lot of different languages, and as far as looking at them and analyzing them. So let me give you some key tips here of any language, essentially. Typically, like for instance, when you see a var like this, it probably means it's a variable. And a variable in a scripting language means hold this particular bucket in memory with this value. In this case, we're seeing the name of the variable is called hash, and we're seeing that it's a string. Okay, so this would be a bunch of numbers and letters as text. And if we look back here at the question, what's the default hash for the backdoor? Okay, we can kind of assume this is it right here. This is our Huckleberry. So BDD04, what have you, and that's what I put there. And you can see that is the case. Then it says, what's the hard-coded salt for the backdoor? Okay, this one takes a little bit more looking into the code and trying to decipher what's going on. So we know we have a variable called hash, and anytime in the script that the word hash is going to be used, it's referring to this long string character. That's what it's referencing. So no longer is this the actual what we put in. We actually just put in the word hash, and it represents that. So let's look down here, and we can see, let's look for some functions that have password stuff in it. Okay, here's one. Function, and this would be the meat of what a program does, a function. And we see verify pass. All right, so that seems like we're on the right track. All right, so there we see our variable hash, and then salt. There we go. Now, when you talk about salt, what we're doing is we're saying we're adding some random values to it. In a simplest form I can think of, if I were to use the password 123, me adding salt to it would be how many permutations of password 123 can I have? By adding a random value in there, whether it be 10-bit, 32-bit, what have you, I'm now increasing the difficulty of being able to compare this to a word list and crack it in a timely fashion by adding additional values called a salt. Okay, so in this case, that's what they're talking about here. And so it looks like the format in the actual result of what the hash will look like, it will be the hash, then a colon appears, and let's see, password, then salt. So the order is password first, colon, salt. So we already know that the hash is this. So it's probably going to be this, colon, salt. That would be likely how the hash is calculated. Let's take a look here. Hash, okay, here's another one. Hash password, password string, salt string. Yeah, so that's kind of where they're going with it here. Hash, okay, so it's a SHA-512. Okay, SHA is a form of hashing. If you're not familiar with the word hashing, hashing is not necessarily an encryption because it can't be reversed. It's a one-way function. What I mean by that is if I took a word Leroy Jenkins and I hashed it with SHA-512, it's going to output a certain determined fixed length in most cases, depending on what hash you're using, a fixed length of characters, and it's going to represent that phrase, Leroy Jenkins. If I hash it again, it's going to be the exact same thing. If I hash it a third time, it's going to be the exact same hash. If I modify it to say Leroy Jenkins with an S at the end of it, and then hash it, it's a completely different hash. Okay? That's the idea behind it. So with SHA-512, that is a version of a hash that has some strong bit size behind it, so pretty awesome stuff. The old way of doing things was SHA-1, which was 40 characters, and it was considered weak due to something they call hash collisions, but we won't get into that right now. All right, so we can see that is the format, and it looks like they are using SHA-512 for their hashing. Let's see if there's any other hash stuff down here. Okay, all right, password. Okay, here's one. Password handler. Okay, verify pass. Okay, hash. Here's the hash. Now that's the default hash that we have. Okay, so this must be the salt. That's the salt value right there. So in this particular case, if I took the hash, colon, and the salt, and the reason I say colon is because of this here. That's our separator. That would actually generate our hash. Interesting. So this right here, I would assume then is the salt. Let's go back here and take a peek. All right, so what's the hard code of the salt? And that's what I put, and yep, that was correct. And it says here, what was the hash that the attacker used? Okay, so there is a default hash, but then there's one that there's one that the attacker actually used. Let's go back and look. Okay, so he did a git clone on this, which basically means he downloaded this backdoor here to his computer, or to the machine. And let's scroll down. All right, so they CD'd into SSH Backdoor, He generated a key pair using SSH himself. All right, here we go. ./backdoor tac A, whatever that means. And then it looks like this long number. Okay, so this is different. This hash is different than the one that's the default, right? Because if we come back here and look, let's look at the default. Starts with B, I think, right? BDD, yep. And it looks like they're using their own custom hash. Starts with 6D. All right, so to figure out what this ./backdoor tac A is all about, let's go back to their website. And I don't believe there's any instructions on the site. Nope. So what we can do is we can download this ourselves and run it and see if there's a help file. So I've already downloaded it just to save a little time. It's right here. It's called SSH Backdoor right there. So I'm going to navigate into that, cd ssh.backdoor. And let's see here. Okay, so there's the command backdoor. So to run it, we'll do ./backdoor. And then we'll see tac H is typically what programs will use for a help file. So let's see if that, cool. All right, so tac A is the hash. So tac A followed by the hash. In this particular case, we know the default one is that, BDDD, but that's not the case here because, yeah, okay, so they're using their own custom hash on that one. So they're doing backdoor, he's doing backdoor tac A to put his hash in, and it looks like it started the SSH backdoor. And here's something to note, port number 2222, remember that, okay? Because apparently that's what port number this one is coded for. And there's nothing left on this, so let's close that out. Let's come back here, and let's see. What was the hash the attacker used? Go back to the PCAP for this. We did that. It says crack the hash using RockU and a cracking tool of your choice. What's the password? All right, so in this particular case, a tool that would be handy for this would be Hashcat. Hashcat would be a good tool to use for this. Let me show you here real quick. Close some of these windows out here. I got a lot of these up. So I've already done this ahead of time because of the time it takes in most cases, especially with the SHA-512. But I'm going to explain what I did, but we're going to go ahead and cat the pop file so you guys can see what's going on here. So in this particular case, if we do a hashcat, which is a password cracking tool in Linux, in Kali Linux, if I say, if I say man hashcat, that means show me the manual page for hashcat. Because again, I don't want to just give you commands and say, hey, just run these commands and go at it. Pop, 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 baby. I want to kind of explain what are we doing here? What's our methodology behind it? So we know a few things. One, we know that it is a SHA-512, right? And we know, well, I mean, that's really all we need to know at the bare minimum. So let's go down through here and look at some of these switches here. TAC A would be something that we'll probably reference here. It's called an attack mode. And there's a few different ways you can do attack mode. There's the straight up one. It's called straight, I think it is. And then there's brute force, and there's a couple other ones. So we'll probably do that. TAC M, we'll use that because we want to put in the hash type, in this case being SHA-512. Now, we don't just put TAC M SHA-512. It appears that there is a reference below that we need to follow for that and also for the attack mode. But we will use TAC M and TAC A. And let's go ahead and ignore warnings so we don't get a bunch of gibberish. So we use the TAC force as well. So let's go down here and look and see what these custom rules are that they're talking about are. And there's a lot of options on Hashcat. Pretty cool stuff. All right, let's see here. Attack mode. Okay, so attack mode, it looks like, well, let's do straight. So we'll do 0. So we'll say TAC A 0. And then the hash type, here we go. So TAC M is the hash type. So let's look for our SHA-512. Okay, there's our SHA-512, but it is a certain format, right? The salt is not first. It is actually the pass first, which is the hash, then followed by the salt. So this actually is the one we want right there. So 1710 is the command. All right, so now we know what to play with. So let's go ahead and take a look here first. So what I did in this particular case is I went ahead and I combined the custom hash that the bad guy had, which we know is this one right here. I combined that with the salt. And looking back at that main.go file, we know there's a colon separating the two. So if you look here, here's the custom hash all the way to there. And then there's the colon, and then I put in the salt, just like that. Okay? Then I save that file as hash.txt. So now what we're going to do, and they want us to use rocku, which is in, I think I know where it's at. But anyways, hash. So we'll start off with hashcat, and then we'll say tac force to ignore warnings. We want tac-m 1710, right? I think it was 1710, pretty sure. And then we want tac-a for attack mode 0, which is straight. And then we want to put in our word list, which in this case for me is under USR share word list, and it's called rocku.txt. And then we'll hit enter. Now this won't display anything because I've already done this in the past. So I'll just bring up the actual pot file, very similar to how John the Ripper does the same thing. But this will take a little bit of time probably because it is a SHA-512, and it will go ahead and try to force and crack whatever this is. So I've already done that, and I'm going to show you here, right there. So I'm catting the actual hashcat.pro pot file from the previous one I've done. So it shows the hash one right there. And it looks like the password is this one right here at the very end called November 16. So James's password in this particular case, likely, is November 16. So for me, as the defender who wants to get back in to the machine via the backdoor that James put on, I know one thing, the port is running on 2222. Another thing I know is his password is November 16. Okay? So those are important things to remember as we crank on through. So that part is done. Next, we have to go ahead, and it says here, now that the investigation is the incident is investigated, Paradox needs someone to take control of the overpass production server again. There's flags on the box, so we're looking for a user flag and a root flag. That overpass can't afford to lose. So we had to start the machine. I've already started it. It's right up here. So the IP address is right there. So we'll go ahead and copy that. It says here, the attacker defaced the website. What message did they leave as a heading? Well, let's go ahead and check it out. So we're going to assume it's on port 80, and we're just going to go ahead and paste and go. All right, here we go. Hacked by Kookdis clan. Secure your servers. Interesting. Anything interesting on the result? No? Okay. All right, so yeah, it looks like they defaced the page. Very cool. So let's go back here. So that is what they put. Use the information you've previously found, or that you found previously, hack your way back in. So from here, they take off the training wheels here, and they just basically say, okay, now that you know what you've done before, now you need to go ahead and log in with whatever it is. So we know that James's password is likely November 16, was it? I believe. Yes. Yep. And we know the IP address of the attack machine, which we just copied, and we also know the port. So in this particular case, we can do an SSH, and we can say James at whatever the IP address is, and then we'll say TACP. Now, we're putting the TACP in here because we know it's not the default port 22. Otherwise, we wouldn't have to put this specifically here because it would just assume 22. So in this case here, let's go ahead and hit enter. Do we want to continue? Yes. And they're going to ask for the password. We know it's November 16. There we go. Pop, pop, pop. Another server drop. Well, almost. We got to get the flags. So very cool. So now we're here, and if we do an ID, we can see that they do have some pseudo privileges, which is cool. We can see he is a regular user. Let's go ahead and do a sudo tacl, and let's verify what he has for pseudo privileges. And we'll put in the password again, November 16, yes. Ah, interesting. So that is not the actual, that's not actually James' password for it. Okay, all right, good deal. That's only for the SSH backdoor. Okay. Well, let's go look at his home directory, see what's going on there. Because we have to find a user text file, I think, right? Is that right? User flag, yep. So we need to go find a user flag. So let's go pop over there and let's see if there's a James. Whoops. Okay, there is. Let's go ahead and navigate over to James. And let's take a peek. Actually, let's do an ls tac l in case there's any hidden files. We'll do an LA for the dot file, meaning hidden in this case. Ah, look at that. All right. So there's our user.txt right there. So cat user.txt. And there is our user flag. Sweetness, loving it. Now this is an interesting one here. .suid_bash. Now I see this over here. This is what they call suid bit. And if you followed my other pop videos, you'll know exactly what this is. But let's talk about it. So when you look at these permission sets in Linux, this first dash indicates if it's a dash for it's a file, or D means it's a directory. The next three letters refer to the owner of the particular file and their permissions. In this case, read, write. Well, let's look at this one. Let's look at one that's not with the S. We'll do this one here. So read, write, X means, RWX means read, write, and execute. That's who the owner has that permission set. And then the next three are what they call for the group that the person is in. Okay, so whatever group James is in also has read, write, and execute. And for everybody else, they just have read and execute, no write. So that's why the tac is there to get rid of the W. Now, what's interesting is you're probably saying, well, this one has an S. Well, yeah, that's called suid bit. And what that means is we're making an executable and we're saying that anybody, standard users, can run this as if it were the owner. In this case, the owner being root. Okay? If it was James, you would be running it as James, right? That sort of thing. So they're saying with the suid bit, run it as whatever the owner is. Okay? And that's typically used for things like, passwd for changing passwords, because we don't want to give the standard user full root access to everything. But we do want them to have the ability to change their password, which would be a root type of function. Therefore, we set the suid bit on that to be able to do that. For instance, if you locate pass, I think it's, is it passwd? I think it is. I can't remember. I can't remember now. But you can do a find for it as well. But okay, etc passwd. So if I were to ls tac l that, ls tac l /etc /passwd. Okay, maybe that's not the wrong location. Anyways, oh no, I'm sorry. That's the user list. But regardless, I'm getting off on a tangent there. So the idea is that we now know that there is a file called .suid_bash. Okay. Now, do keep in mind, if you were to run this as an executable, you still have to put a / before it. So it would be ./.suid_bash. Now, there is a pretty cool site here because we need to get root access and we need to be able to run this bad boy here as that particular user. There is a website called GTFO Bins, which is pretty awesome. And if you go to it, I'll go all the way up here to the top. Walk you through this real quick here. Back. So if we were to go to GTFO bins, this one here has a slew of different privilege escalation types of strings and functions that we can run and take advantage of. So what we do is we say, okay, I know I'm dealing with some sort of bash file. So I put in bash, and I know by looking at the name, I'm going to assume it means I can run this as a bash as suid, in other words, run it as root. If I can run a bash shell as root, that means I can go ahead to the root directory and see the flag. So in that particular case, let's come back here. And if I run bash and I say suid, they're saying here, if the binary has a suid bit set, it does not drop the elevated privileges and may be abused to access the file system. If it is used to run, okay, so it looks like we're doing the shell or the bash, tac P, that's the one right there. Okay, so in this case, / is there, but ours is called .suid_bash, so it would be .suid_bash -P, if that makes sense, in order to get this to run with elevated privileges. So let's come back here and let's see if that's true. All right, so we do our /, which is for running the binary, and the name of the binary is .suid. I'm sorry, not dot, _bash, and then we know with the GTFO bins. That TAC P is what we would run for this. So let's do that. Okay. Now let's do an ID and let's see what's happening. Root. Oh, look at that. There it is. Bing, right there. 0. Loving it, baby. Now we can say pop, 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 another server drop. So let's go ahead and navigate to root. We should be able to do that now. Excellent. And there's our root flag. Boom. Pop, 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 another server drop. We are rocking and rolling. We have now completed the challenge. So, what did we go over on that? Well, quite a few things here. There was a lot of cool little packet analysis at the beginning, using a PCAP file, trying to determine the way the attacker did something and kind of retracing the steps, and then doing it ourselves and actually getting back into the machine itself. And then hopefully now we can just go ahead and delete these files out of there so he no longer has a backdoor. We're going to say, James, bye-bye. See ya, playa. Ain't going to happen. So in this case, a lot of cool things we learned on this, which is why I kind of lumped this in with Intel Bytes as well, because as a cyber threat intel guy, you need to be able to do malware analysis, some packet analysis to help figure out what's going on with a particular attack to aid the SOC or incident response. But then there's the pop element where we actually broke back into the machine using the back door. Cool stuff. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed that video. I plan to do some more of the pop again because I like doing those types of videos. But we're also going to be doing a lot more of the Intel Bytes. That seems to be one that everybody seems to be digging. So check out my YouTube channel and subscribe if you guys are digging the content. I have a few other different video series in there, like Essentials and Bounty Hunter Training and all kinds of cool stuff. And I try to put out videos maybe twice, sometimes 3 times a week if I can. And it'll be related to either Intel Bytes or pop, breaking in with CTFs, all kinds of cool stuff. So make sure you guys check out everything that's on there. Click subscribe and notifications for the bell. And till next time, peace out, players.